So this presentation is based on the framework that Dr. Jeanette Hughes presented to us. It's called the 9 elements of digital literacies, and these 9 elements are connection, construction, communication, civic engagement, critical literacy, creation, code, culture, and cognition. I'm going to be focusing on the 3 at the top, the cognition, connection, and construction. So the purpose of this portfolio presentation is to focus on the constructive and the communicative elements of digital tools as they lead to deeper levels of understanding, hence cognition. Before we move any further, I think it's good for us to have some definitions of these key terms. So when we're talking about cognition, the cognitive digital literacy skill, we're talking about the mental action or process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and senses. Construction is the action of building something, typically a large structure. Obviously, that's not what we're doing in our digital presentations. And communication, the imparting or exchanging of information by speaking, writing, or using some other medium. So what I'm going to present is the idea that communication, the communicative, and the construction actually leads to deeper levels of cognitive understanding through digital tools. Now, this is obviously not a new idea. Doug Belshaw has become quite a speaker recently on the whole idea of what is digital literacy. He has done a TED Talk and does the speaker circuit around North America and Europe. So if you were so inclined, you could go to YouTube and see his TED
Still don't
Talk.
understand that digital literacy is a condition. It's not a threshold. It affects your identity because every time you're given a new tool, it gives you a different way of impacting upon the world. The medium is always going to be at least part of the message.
What Belshaw does bring across is a framework that is very similar to the Hughes framework that I'm using, that there are essential elements of digital literacy. Once again, there are the cognitive, the constructive, the communicative, the civic, the critical, the creative, the confident, and the cultural. In this video, he actually explains more what each one of these separate elements mean.
Right. So in terms of the cognitive element, this is kind of ways of seeing the world. These are lenses in which you see the world. Everything from the kind of digital natives and digital immigrants dichotomy, something which has been kind of widely rejected now. But the reason why that was so powerful, the reason why that kind of struck a chord, is because it's a way of seeing the world. It's a mental model, and it's a way of understanding digital environments. And we need to teach, we need to encourage with students, we need to find ways in which they can look at digital environments in lots of different ways. Otherwise, they're just looking at life in a digital environment in one way, for example, through the lens of Facebook. And then that means they'll be inappropriate in other circumstances. The constructive element, this is about constructive social action. And the reason why I think this is important is because it's creating something new. Now, online, this has got a lot to do with remixing and appropriating things. So, for example, through Creative Commons license, you can mash things up, you can change things. And I'm going to talk about that later through the kind of meme of lolcats. But Lawrence Lessig talks about this a lot in remix culture, and he talks about using networks for positive purposes. And that's something close to my heart because at the moment I'm kind of set up this social enterprise called Purposed, and this is trying to develop, it's trying to increase the space for participation and discourse about the purpose of education. And we've done that pretty much solely online, and that's about constructive social action, and I would say the digital literacies are involved there. The next one is the communicative aspect. And this is all about understanding how communications media work. So in front of me now, I've got my iPad, which I'm looking at the things which I need to make sure that I say. I've got a Zipcast from SlideShare in front of me, but I've also got Skype over here as well. So I've got lots of different communications media going on, and I know how to use each one effectively. Whereas my son, for example, who talks to my father, who works in Abu Dhabi through Skype, doesn't really understand how it works. And I think it's important to understand the nuts and bolts of how things work, to use things effectively. If we don't understand what things are predicated upon, again, something I'm going to talk about later, then we're not going to use them as well as we could. So I think there's a digital literacy element there.
So, when we're talking about the constructive element of digital literacy, we cannot be passive consumers of technology and information. We should strive to use digital tools in reflective and appropriate ways to be constructive and to be socially active. The communicative, digital tools and power structures change the world, the way we communicate. An element of digital literacy is how we take command of that structure and use it to communicate effectively and contribute meaningfully. Leading to this idea of the cognitive, that we can't just consider procedural ways in which we use devices and programs. It's the way we think when we are using them. And this is going to be my focus on the rest of the presentation. These were quotes directly from Belshaw's doctoral thesis on this concept. Once again, I will make all the links available. So, this is a taxonomy of cognitive skills. It's adapted from Bloom's taxonomy. So if we have the starting from the bottom going up, we have evaluation. So when we're talking about the cognitive skill evaluation, this is verifying information. To synthesize, the synthesis cognitive skill is to generalize and to integrate information. Analysis, to identify patterns and relationships. Application, to use information in daily life. Comprehension, to understand information. Finally, to knowledge, which is to recall specific facts. So I believe that digital tools and literacy in these digital tools leads to a higher level of cognitive understanding.